What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to get into my top 5 rest of seasons risers. Now, we got 2 things to go over before we go into that. First, I zoomed out the camera. Let me know what you guys think of this. I realized that in the summer, this is what we were doing. You guys could see my arms and stuff. I feel like over time, it just kept zooming in, and I just haven't fixed it since then. So I felt like, I just felt like it wasn't encapsulating everything I wanted to encapsulate. Also, it is super hectic right now. We're recording this video on Friday, and I'm getting anxiety from it because I have this whole outline. I think by the time this video comes out tomorrow morning, like half of these players could just not be, suiting up this week. They had some kind of COVID issue. There's a million COVID problems. We now have Raiders versus Browns scheduled for Monday. We have Washington football team versus the Eagles scheduled for Tuesday. I'm still getting a billion notifications from Schefter. It's insane. So I hope that everyone has good luck for these playoffs. These playoffs are going to be something else, fellas, because I don't see there's a 5% outcome where they just decide, we're going to shut this all down. I don't would they take a month pause? There could be there's some weird things that could happen. I don't think that will happen, but there's a lot of weirdness in these playoffs. Now, with that being said, just start your guys, hope for the best. I also have a mini Fire Fest because I don't know if you guys watch listen to part of my take, but I have 2 FFPC teams that made it to the tournament round. Me, like a dumbass, didn't read the fine print when I signed up for $350 leagues that say waivers do not run after week 14. So if I was smart last week, I would have put in waiver claims to plan for these weeks. My 2 teams have 1 quarterback. I have 1 quarterback, 1 tight end on 1 team, and then so the onesie positions I'm screwed at. If Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Hunter Henry, Jake Elliott, or Greg Zuerlein miss time for COVID or injury, I'm screwed. So let's pray that doesn't happen. Now, regardless, let's get into our top 5 skyrocketing players. Hopefully none of them get COVID between now and when this video gets uploaded. Also, after this video, not that it matters to you right now, but I'm going to be going live for a nice little draft. So with all that being said, let's get straight into the video. Make sure you subscribe if you're new. Leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
Also, I might be kind of selfish. I was really looking forward to Saturday football, like Saturday NFL football, where, we could get the Browns slate, we could get the Colts slate, but now the Browns are going to be playing at 5 p.m. on Monday, at least as of when I'm recording this. Who knows when this video comes out? Who knows what's going to be going on? Now, let's just move right along here. Act like nothing is going on. Let's talk about Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is a guy that I had at RB21 last week. So the whole premise of this video, I know I've been talking about a million different things, but I was told in the comments that you guys like when I just kind of ramble, say whatever I want. It kind of sets me apart, whatever. So with Dalvin Cook last week, back that up real quick. The whole idea of this video is I have rest of season rankings I put out every week. So I looked at what my rest of season rankings were at last week. I compare them to the ones that I made on Wednesday. If you want access to those, they're on Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. But for Dalvin Cook, I have him all the way back at RB21 last week. After his performance this week, I put him up to RB3. So that's a massive jump. What is that? God, I got to do the math in my head now. 21 minus 3 is 18. So that's 18 spots of running back ranks. And I only had him so low because of injury. We've talked about this, but the guy has had 4 shoulder surgeries since high school. He had a torn labrum in one of his shoulders. He had a dislocated shoulder on the other. I was under the impression that it wouldn't, I was under the impression that we might not see him until week 17. That doesn't sound like something you can just kind of, I guess it is a pain tolerance thing with shoulder injuries. But once you dislocate both, how are you taking handoffs and taking punishment as a running back? It's genuinely insane what Dalvin Cook is doing. And I still have concerns about re-injury. But when we're talking about a 3-week window at this point, injury concerns can kind of be put to the side. So I moved him up to RB3, especially because he just had an explosion. He had his first 30-point week since week 9 of last season, and it was his second only 200-yard rushing game in his career. It feels like he's back, which is crazy, which is at mad respect to Dalvin Cook for, 2 dislocated shoulders coming back, whatever. Guy's an absolute, like, he's a robo human. And I like that he looks really efficient. Now, it was a bad Steelers defense, which is pretty wild to say, but the Steelers rush DVOA defense is like bottom 5 in the NFL. Dalvin Cook absolutely ran all over them, but I think that he gets a nice bump here because he's playing well, so he's playing hot, because on the season he's been playing inefficient, which is really weird for Dalvin Cook as a guy that's usually in the Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry area of really efficient, really nice, pure runners. He hasn't been efficient this year. That kind of flipped, and on top of that, I think that he gets a little bit of a boost because in the red zone, of course, Dalvin Cook always gets his red zone looks, and he's going to dominate those red zone looks, but a little bit of those, or not a little bit, but I would say, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but 10, 20, 30% of the touchdown looks go to Adam Thielen. He gets the end zone targets. Now, Dalvin Cook obviously gets the goal line carries, but that's, your goal line offense. When you get within the 5, within the 10, you're looking at Adam Thielen, you're looking at Dalvin Cook. When you take away Adam Thielen, then you can look at Dalvin Cook more. So Dalvin Cook is going to just get more red zone equity as a whole. So that's why I like him, as a top 3 running back rest of season after being so low on him, because he was only that low because of injury. And now that he's shown that he can just come back and be just as good, even more efficient, I have the confidence to put him back in the top 3 conversation. Now, our second player that is skyrocketing up my rankings is going to be Chris Godwin. And Godwin has really come on here the last 2 weeks. He moved up from like wide receiver, I want to say like in the wide receiver 12 to 15 range. Now, then he went to my wide receiver 10. Then he went to my wide receiver 6. He is now my wide receiver 6 moving forward. And he feels like he is Tom Brady's favorite target. Like, he is peaking at the right time. Him and Tom Brady are really getting in sync here. And these last 2 weeks have been absolutely insane. He now has 32.9% of the targets in the last 2 weeks, 25 receptions, 248 receiving yards, 25.4 points per game without a single touchdown. The wide receiver 2 over that span, only behind Justin Jefferson, I believe. I could be wrong. But it's wild. In that offense, a 32.9% target share next to Gronk, Evans, and Leonard Fournette is not an easy task. So Chris Godwin is a guy that we've known has been really talented. He had that wide receiver 2 finish as a second-year player. Then he comes out in his third year, messed up due to injury. Now he comes out this year, and he is kind of what, if you told us that this is what he was doing in year 4 after year, no, it was year 3 breakout. So he's in year 5 right now. But if you told us after his year 3 breakout that this is what he was doing in 2 years, we would say, yeah, that sounds about right. And like I said, he's peaking at the right time, right? When we're getting into the playoffs, he's just getting hot, getting into his groove. Like, we have guys like Jamar Chase, kind of Deebo Samuel, but then you have other guys that were really good in the beginning of the season that have cooled off since then. Guys like DJ Moore, guys like Jamar Chase. I'm trying to think of other guys that were really hot in the beginning of the season that have kind of fizzled out. I guess you could kind of say like Ezekiel Elliott, but there's guys that are fading away, but Godwin is finally picking up steam at the end here. Now, he's been good all season, but him kind of elevating to this spot is really good for the playoffs, and he has some juicy matchups here. Now, they're not like amazing, like layup type matchups, but he has New Orleans this week at home, which is a match made in heaven, 4th most fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. Then he's going to be in Carolina, which is actually a tough matchup. They're allowing the 31st most fantasy, or they're allowing, the 31st most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So that's a tough matchup. Again, though, when you have this offense, you have Tom Brady, they're a threat to score 35 plus every single week. And then this Jets game is a little bit, I think, misleading with 21st. The only reason that that's so low is because teams just blow them out so quickly, but the Buccaneers pass the ball at such a high rate. Like, even in games where it's blowouts against the Buccaneers, or not the Buccaneers, but against the Falcons. It was against the Falcons, I want to say 2 weeks ago. They were maybe like 11-point favorites, and they still threw the ball like 50 times. Like, they're going to throw the ball a ton, and the Jets have the worst, or the second worst pass DVOA defense. So even though they're allowing like middle of the pack fantasy points, they're a really bad secondary, and the Buccaneers pass the ball so much that Godwin should be able to pretty much crush the Jets and crush the Saints. Godwin could be one of those guys where, like last year, we had Stephon Diggs, Deontay Johnson as guys that you needed to have if you had any kind of shot to challenge Alvin Kamara's 6-touchdown game. I think Chris Godwin could be one of those guys this year. Now, another guy that's moving up my ranks is George Kittle. And it's not by a lot, right? It's only one spot. He moved from my tight end 2 to my tight end 1. And I will say, I wrote this outline yesterday before the Thursday night game. Travis Kelce balled out of his mind last night. Now, I think everyone's going to kind of flip-flop. We were just on the, screw Kelce, move him down 1, put Kittle at the top. And I will say, They're back-to-back for me. I'm still going to prefer George Kittle at tight end 1 and Travis Kelce at tight end 2, but it's very close now. Regardless, though, Kittle came from a spot where he was more in like the Mark Andrews, Kyle, I wouldn't even say like Kyle Pitts, but like in the Mark Andrews, like Mike Gesicki, Dallas Goedert type range. He's now fully moved up after 2 insane weeks that he's had. He has, I did a poll beginning of the season. I was like, who'd you rather have rest of the season, Hawkinson or Kittle? That's like the first 2 weeks. It was lopsided towards Hawkinson, like 80%, 20%. Now we're in a spot where George Kittle is peaking at the right time. He's now the tight end 1 in points per game, not counting this week. And he's been on an absolute tear. 16.8 points per game, tight end 1, like I said. And in the last 2 weeks, he has had a 41% target share. At tight end, guys, a 41% target share in the same offense with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk is just madness. He has averaged a 36.9 points per game over that span. The next highest tight end is Mark Andrews with 18.8 points per game over the last 2 weeks. He is doubling second. He is on just a wild tear. I think that part of George Kittle's game is that he does kind of like get hot and he's like kind of streaky a little bit. He's finally scoring touchdowns this year, which is crazy. I want to say during his like peak, his one peak season where he like set the record for most receiving yards, I want to say he only had like 5 to 8 touchdowns. He's never been a big touchdown guy, but those are finally coming in. Shanahan's going to want to scheme his offense around Kittle as he's like really getting hot here. And he has a really light schedule down the stretch as well. Now, again, if you want to put Kelce at tight end 1, I think that's also completely fine, but I think that they're going to be right next to each other, which still means Kittle is skyrocketing because there was this point where Kelce was in a tier of his own. Now, at the very least, Kittle and Kelce are in the same tier. That's all that really matters here. If you want to put Kelce 1, Kittle 2, I don't really care. It's just that they are now same tier. Because you do have to also remember, Kelce absolutely went crazy last night, but like the previous 3 weeks, he's been absolute garbage. And he hasn't had the same points per game that he, like last year, he averaged like 20 points per game. This year, he's been around like 15.8-ish. So he's kind of taking a step back here. Now, with Kittle, he has the Falcons, who aren't very good. Then he has the Titans, who are decent against tight ends. Then he has Houston. He should pretty much kill the Falcons, kill the Texans, and the Titans game could be a shootout. So he has plenty of spots to really, light things up down the stretch here. He probably got a lot of your guys' teams into the playoffs if you had him. I wish that I sent some teams with Kittle into the playoffs. I only have like one team with Kittle in the playoffs right now. But, I mean, he is somebody that I think deserves some respect. Somebody that we were kind of sleeping on middle of the season just because he was struggling. But now that he was hurt, he was struggling. But now that he's back and he's going so crazy, you kind of just have to respect the boy, George Kittle. Then moving on, I'm just checking my phone to see if there's any more Adam Schefter tweets. Wow, Washington staff has been told Washington football will play the Eagles 7 p.m. on Tuesday. So when you guys see this will all be known information, but that's just absolutely crazy. Now, our fourth player that's moving up my ranks is Christian Kirk, and I love Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk is a draft darling of mine. I love Christian Kirk. I wonder if I could pull it up right now, but on Underdog, for those of you guys out there, you know that I love Underdog. I have hundreds of teams on there. I actually want to see if I can pull it up real quick, but I for sure have a disgusting amount of Christian Kirk exposure. Yeah, Christian Kirk was my fourth highest owned wide receiver, 23% owned Christian Kirk. I love this man. He was a really good prospect at Texas A&M, freshman breakout. I was going to say he played with Johnny Manziel, but I'm going to say no. Maybe he did as a freshman. Regardless, though, he has this build that's very similar to an Elijah Moore, where he's a slot wide receiver, explosive, broke out early, second-round draft pick. Like in an alternate universe, Christian Kirk and Elijah Moore are very similar prospects. Christian Kirk, in his first year, didn't look good. I want to say in his second year, he had like a 24%. He had like a 24.5% target share, which is really, really strong. He just hasn't lived back up to those expectations. I still do believe that he, not what I wanted him to be, but he still is a pretty talented wide receiver. And the reason that he's getting a bump from wide receiver 39 to wide receiver 31 is because of DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is now out for the season. And you can give a bump to, AJ Green, Rondale Moore. But I like Christian Kirk as the lead guy there because Kirk is going to have every opportunity to be the wide receiver 1. He has been operating as the wide receiver 2 in this offense. He's averaging 11.5 points per game, which isn't crazy, but I really like him for this playoff stretch because he's somebody that can give you a massive explosion type game. He is kind of a boom bust. He can give you a Will Fuller type blow up game. He had a game 2 years ago, I remember. He had 138 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, he can give you that, 3 touchdown game in an offense with Kyler Murray. He has a great quarterback. He's going to be slot into, I want to say they'll probably play him on the outside, opposite of AJ Green, and then have Rondale Moore in the slot. We'll kind of see how that works out, but I really like Christian Kirk to be able to, get more routes with DeAndre Hopkins gone, get more targets, be more efficient, and then kind of, he's going to get every opportunity to be the main guy in a high-scoring offense. So I'm very excited for Christian Kirk. He's the team leader right now in targets and receptions. Again, he is the next guy up after Hopkins. I think AJ Green gets a nice bump too. I think all of the wide receivers on that team get a nice bump, but in particular, I like Christian Kirk moving forward. He's, you can see on this graphic, he's the wide receiver 30 in PPR right now. He hasn't been too bad all season. Then our last player we're going to talk about, rising up my ranks, the boy, Justin Fields. He went from my QB 21 to my QB 12. Justin Fields, in terms of fantasy, is the real deal. In his last 3 full starts, so games where he started and played the entire game, he is averaging 22.6 points per game. Over that span, he is the QB 3 in points per game. I'm telling you guys, if you have, obviously, I doubt that you have Baker as your starter, but if any of these injuries are affecting you, I can't think of an injury at quarterback like Lamar Jackson. If you have Lamar Jackson, he's not good to go. Go grab Justin Fields because he has been the QB3 over his last 3 starts. He's averaging 74 rushing yards per game, which is insane for a quarterback. The guys who have the most, even like a Jalen Hurts and a Lamar Jackson, they're usually hovering around 50. He's averaging 74 isn't super sustainable, but he's using his legs, he's using his wheels. Not even all of these are designed runs. He's scrambling. He's making plays downfield. Fields has looked really good, and his schedule isn't hard down the stretch at all. He has a very nice rest of season schedule. He has the Vikings this week, who are allowing the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Then he has the Seahawks, who are allowing the 14th most. Then he has the Giants, who are allowing the 15th most. None of these defenses are particularly scary. They're all defenses that are, either middle of the pack or conducive to quarterback scoring in fantasy. He could be a guy where if you have him in best ball teams, he could kind of be, one of those guys you needed to have. Because if you can get a guy like Justin Fields without having to give up, a 5th or 6th round pick that you could have, spent on, or a 4th round pick on like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen, you could have gotten Cup. If you could have gotten Cup, Debo, Jamar Chase, then you match the team in the playoffs production that they're getting from, like Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, any of those guys, and you can just match that with Justin Fields, it puts you at a massive advantage. So he is going from my QB 21 to QB 12. You get another 20-point game, and he's going to be like a top 8 quarterback for me rest of season. I'm very excited about him in Dynasty. Fields has looked really good from a fantasy perspective. He hasn't looked like a world beater, but for a rookie quarterback, when we talk about, Lawrence has looked bad, Zach Wilson's looked bad, pretty much everyone besides Mac Jones, Justin Fields has been very exciting this year, and I like him as, a playoff guy down the stretch. The only concern with him is that you have some concern that Matt Nagy might pull him for Andy Dalton or something. I played him the week where he got hurt and Andy Dalton came in, so that sucked. But if you're in a pinch at quarterback and you don't have a Taysom Hill, I like Justin Fields moving forward. Now, that's going to do it for us today, fellas. I'm going to hop off of here. I'm going to hop on stream, hang out with you guys. We'll talk about the games that are getting postponed. We're going to do a nice little fantasy draft on Underdog. So a lot of fun things planned for today. With that being said, I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice. 10-0, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr. Mean.